Hey, what's up, y'all? Juju here. Welcome to another rendition of our tier list guide. Today, we're going to be going over the light cards from the welcome set. Overall, light cards are very underwhelming, especially in the welcome set, especially if I was like a free-to-play player. But nonetheless, there are some gems, kind of, maybe, not really. I don't know. We'll see. But as you can see, I already have my ratings. I didn't use the tier list maker because, honestly, getting a photo of each card and making a tier list is just a lot of work, and I don't have that kind of time. But hopefully this information will still prove useful. I'm going to go over the key right now, just to go over like what each tier means. S tier is very powerful. A is consistently good. B is splashable. C has some potential. D is weak, and F is hot garbage. With that being said, let's move on to the cards. So, oops, I didn't even have that prepped. Woohoo! That's nice. All right. So, first up, we have Brilliant Intervention. 2 mana, give frontline to a creature and fully heal it. It's a B tier at best for me. It is splashable, and honestly, if you're a free-to-play player and you're playing the light class, it doesn't really, you don't have a lot of options. Pretty much, but this card still has its uses. Fully healing a minion is always good, especially if that minion has a lot of health and is already traded into another minion. Giving it frontline is also good, especially if that minion has a lot of health. Very conditional card. I could see it being played in some decks. But yeah, overall, I think it's B tier. It's not like a must include. It's just splashable at best. Number 2, we have Battlement Luminary. It's a 2 mana 2/1 roar, give +1 health to each other friendly creature. This is a pretty useful card in aggro decks. However, in order to get its mana worth, in order to get its full value, you need to play it on a board with at least 2 minions. That way it'll be 2 mana, 2 strength, and 3 health worth of stats. It works in aggro decks for sure, especially if decks that try to go wide on board. However, I don't think the stat line justifies the effect, really. It's conditional and it's splashable at best, which is why I give it B tier. But it's still a good card. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I just think that you could be playing better cards at the 2 mana spot. Like, I would, if I made an aggro light deck, I might include one, but I might. It's not a must include 2 of, you know. So third card, is going to be Crook of Shepherding. This card is hot garbage. 2 mana relic with 2 strength and 1 durability. The afterlife effect isn't really significant. Yeah, it nets you a card to put back in your hand, but it's just a card back in your hand, really. It replaces itself, which is good. But 2 strength at 2 mana just feels bad. It can only trade into like full health 1 minions and then weakens like weaker minions. Also has 1 durability, which means you're only using this like card once, right? And then you're trading health for it because it's a relic. So I think it's hot garbage. The afterlife doesn't really justify the stats of the card. Next up, we have Commune with the Light. This card is a C tier card. Draw a card, give each creature in your hand 1 health. This card has some potential. Drawing a card is also always good. For 3 mana, it's a little expensive for 1 card, but I mean, it's justified if you can draw, or if you can give like more than 2 creatures in your hand 1 health. Yeah, it's pretty conditional if you ask me. Sometimes, like, ideally, I would probably want to play this card as early as possible, but 3 mana just feels so expensive for cycle, especially in a meta where aggro is very like favorable, in my opinion. And if you're playing against other free-to-play players, like most likely they'll be playing aggro decks, unless you're like really low tier and you're playing someone who wants to play like really expensive cards. But yeah, it has some uses, but there are better options at 3 mana for light cards, light decks in particular. Pluck from Fate. Pull a random creature from each void into your hand. I gave this card a D, and it's weak. 1, it's 3 mana, which is pretty expensive. to get 2 cards. You know what? It's not expensive to get 2 cards. The thing that I have a problem with, though, is it's random creatures from each void. This would be way more useful if you can choose. Yeah, it's just D tier in my opinion. Next up, we have Conversion. This is a 4 mana cost card. Transform a creature with cost 5 or less into a 2/2 Acolyte and give it protected. I also gave it a D. It's borderline hot trash. And the reason why is because in order to... Well, one, it's conditional, right? It needs to be 5 cost or less. But since the this card costs 4 mana, in order to gain an advantage on tempo, you need to play this on a 5 cost minion for sure. And the reason being is you're not even destroying the minion, you're just replacing it with a 2/2 with protected, which also is problematic to deal with because you'd effectively need 2 sources of damage to kill it unless you're playing like a Blight Bomb, which you're not because Blight Bomb is a death card. Also, you can use this on your own minions, which I could see this being okay. Maybe if you're running like a card that summons a 1/1, like a Card Shark, for example, and you want to turn the Card Shark into like a 2/2 Acolyte with protected, I could kind of see that being okay. 4 mana is just so expensive. I would not like... This is not a must include. I just think this card is really weak. Okay, next up we have Radiant Spirit, which is also weak. Borderline hot garbage. 4 mana, 3/4. At the end of your turn, a random friendly injured character is healed for 2. Okay. 3/4 is just a really weak stat line for a 4 mana minion. It's good that this is the effect procs at the end of the turn, though, so it's guaranteed to heal something. But you do have to be damaged. I don't know. I you know how I feel about 4 health minions, especially if they cost more than 2 mana. It's just really common to see cards that can deal with 4 health in the game really well. Like Canopy Barrage, Star Shard Bolt, any of the 3 damage spells paired with like 1 damage like God Power. Yeah, it's just pretty weak in my opinion, which is why I gave it a D. And last but not least, we have Peacebringer. I gave this a C. Wow, I gave it a C. That's amazing. For an 8 mana cost card, this better be a good effect. So Peacebringer, 8 mana cost, frontline, roar, set each enemy creature's strength and health to 2. It's a 4 mana minion, or 8 mana minion with 7 health and frontline, which is okay. It's a kind of decent stat line, especially because it reminds me a lot of Tarim from Hearthstone. You basically get to weaken your opponent's board and then slap down a stronger minion. The reason why it's not higher is because it costs 8 mana. And that just feels bad. It's 8 mana in Gods Unchained equates to 11 to 12 turns of waiting. 11 if you have the Bag of Tricks, 12 if you don't. And if you draw this card early game, it just sits in your hand the whole game. And the average game in Gods Unchained takes about 7 to 10 turns, depending on what kind of deck you're facing. Yeah, it just doesn't feel good. So that's why I gave it a C. It's splashable, especially maybe if you're running like a control, like free-to-play light deck. However, it's 8 mana just feels bad, in my opinion. And that's pretty much it with the light cards. Feel free to watch the other videos on the other gods to see what ratings I give them. If you liked and enjoyed this content, feel free to support the channel by liking the video, sharing it somewhere, and subscribing to the channel. That's pretty much it for me. Hope this helps you. If you want my closing thoughts, I think light cards from the welcome set are very underwhelming in general, but there are some use cases for it. But yeah, have a great day, everyone. Take care.